you've seen the short I posted on Friday night, you'll know that we took the 300ZX to the drag strip, and it didn't make it home under its own power, so we need to get that into the garage and figure out exactly how much damage we did to it. When I was doing a burnout, it hooked and wheel hopped and broke the stud on the 350Z diff, so the back of the differential isn't supported by the subframe anymore, and it is clunking around pretty bad. So I'm going to try to get it in here without doing any more damage, and then get it jacked up and remove the diff and see how we can get this fixed and braced up so it doesn't do it again. I rolled it off the trailer. I was able to actually drive it up here very, very carefully. So now we're going to get this thing jacked up and start removing the subframe. I was just going to remove the differential, and then I decided that if I'm going to build a brace, it'd probably be easier just to pop the subframe out. It doesn't really take that long, and on the 240SX subframe, just take your brakes off and then a couple mounting points and coil over, so not really a big deal. The problem I'm running into now is both my sets of jack stands are under that piece of crap, so I'm going to see if I can just block this up on some wood for now and then go from there. I just got the first tire off. Already I can see that I took the CV boot out. Got to figure out where I can get a new boot for that and then get that repacked, because these are still good joints. So I suspect it ripped because the boot is sitting directly on the subframe, and it just tore it. Finally got the subframe out. It's not super hard to do, but I'm only working on it for about 45 minutes or an hour each night after work, as I got time. And as I suspected, the only damage really is this boot right here. That'll need to be replaced, and the stud used to go through that hole right there. So I haven't really decided exactly how I'm going to fix this yet. I would like to find one of the Pathfinder double stud covers and just drill another hole and do it that way, but I'm not sure exactly if my yard has one yet or not. I know there's two Pathfinders there. I may have to go see. If that doesn't work, then I'll just replace the stud and then build a brace on the other side, which has been proven to work and will work just fine. But yeah, it's didn't break any of the welds up in front. Everything looks good. So now what I need to do is I need to mark this differential so that way I can get the distance correct and make sure that it goes back in exactly the way I had it. Because this piece right here I actually had spaced out. There wasn't, my drive shaft's just a tiny bit short going from the Q45 to the 350Z because of not having the tone ring in the front of the 350Z diff like the Q45 did. I think now I'm going to work on getting the axles out, and this one definitely has to come out on both sides because of the boot, and we'll get the differential marked and pull that. Obviously there's only 2 bolts left. I may have to pull the sway bar out of here. One other thing I'm going to do while I'm in here is this e-brake cable right here. Works great, but this loop right here is too close to this adjuster and gets hung up inside here. I should have put the turnbuckle that's right here on this side over here, so I'm probably going to cut this and then redo parts of this and then just put another extension up to this. But doing the crimps has been a lot more reliable and makes me feel a lot better, knowing that the e-brake is not going to fall off, and I'm doing 3 of the ferrules with 2 crimps per, so it's got 6 crimps on each side. Seems to hold well, and I've ripped on this e-brake hard and it hasn't slipped any, so I'm pretty happy with that. So I'll get this taken apart and figure out what the next steps are. Decided to take the arms off just to remove some weight from this and make it a little bit easier moving around by myself out here. I finally got the stud in from Nissan, which costs about $13. So I can start moving forward, getting this differential out, and then gotta this piece of the stud out. Surprisingly enough, this broke on the big side and not on the small side. You would have thought that it would have snapped off in here somewhere, but actually it broke off right about here. So I'll probably have to weld a nut to that to back that out. Not too big of a deal, but we'll get that done here pretty quick. And then we'll start modifying this subframe. I wasn't able to locate a Pathfinder cover quick enough, so what I'm going to do is pick up this mounting point right here and then this bolt here through the subframe. I'm going to take some of this 1-inch bar stock that I have and then drill a hole in the center of it, run that through the back and weld it on both sides. I think that'll be a clean look and it should give me all the strength I need with this stud replaced. So that'll be 3 mounting points instead of just the one that it had. I may even do the same here on the top. I just need to make sure that there's enough clearance for this bar to sit here without hitting into the body. So when I take this differential out, I will put the subframe in with nothing in it, so it's easy to put up in there. Check for clearance, and if I have clearance, then I will do all 4. One here, one there, and then here and on this side. It shouldn't take all that long to do, and we'll get it done here pretty quick now that we have this stud. So next step is getting the differential out, checking for clearances, and start drilling some holes. That gives you a better look at the stud. It's snapped off in there pretty good. It shouldn't be that hard to remove. Just weld a nut to it. It's probably Loctite on there, so we'll deal with that. So the other thing I wasn't expecting is the mounting bolts have actually twisted. I'm glad they twisted and didn't break, because that would have dropped the differential right on the ground. That would have been real bad news. So I'm going to have to find some replacements for these. Both of them are in really bad shape. That should be the last of it right there. Shouldn't be any more real big surprises or anything. So we'll take this down to the house garage and we'll weld a nut into that and back that out real quick and try to find out where I can get some good replacements for these. So here's what I've come up with to reinforce this mounting point on the differential. I had this 1-inch bar stock. I turned that down to fit this 1-inch pipe. I pressed it on there. I'm going to weld this gap here. And that should be strong enough. And then you can see down in there one of the factory bolts. I'm going to get some longer bolts and we're going to bolt them to each side. So I did 2 of them, 1 for each side. So I'll reinstall the differential into the subframe, which is still sitting over there. And then I'll bore these holes out and weld these in tight. So now you'll have this mounting stud and then 2 other bolts on the differential holding it. And then I don't think I'm going to deal with a brace that bolts down to these, because I think this will be strong enough, especially if I replace these bolts with something a little bit harder than what's actually in there. That should mitigate any kind of twisting, and then I can still use the Pathfinder cover later on if I can find one for a decent price. And got this brought up here into the house garage. And here's the setup. Got some 10.9 bolts straight through. And they are going to 2 of the case bolts. I need to take these out and weld it up. And then clean this up, get the paint off of it, and weld these in. And then I'm probably going to replace this centering washer here that I used, because this is pretty bent. But yeah, I'll get that cleaned up and weld up real quick. Everything is welded in now. These are the pieces that the bolts go through, and that goes right to the case. And then I just welded some washers there for a spacer. And that just keeps the differential spaced out to the correct length. I didn't figure I needed to finish welding them because they're just compressed, so just so they don't fall out when you take the differential out. I'm gonna let this cool off. I'm gonna do a quick test fit, and then just throw that differential back in, and then I'll end up taking it back out one more time and painting this up. All right, everything is welded in. There was a little bit of spray paint on there. I replaced this washer right here because that one was all bent out of shape, and I actually welded it in better. This would have been probably easier if I had just made a brace to come down to these 2 bolt holes here, but I decided I didn't want to do that just because I don't like having the fill blocked on this. And I know you don't have to get into that very often, but it's enough to be a kind of a pain. So I decided to go this way, and I'm actually really happy with the way that came out. I don't think I'm going to have any problems breaking them off there. So that effectively triples the mounting points in the back compared to what the factory 350Z had. Now, like I said before, if I want to go with the Pathfinder cover, I still can, and then I'll add another stud somewhere in here. And is it needed? Probably not, but I would like to get that one because that is a finned cover. For now, this is what we got. I'm going to get this installed back into the car. I think this time I'm going to install the subframe with the differential first, get that all bolted in, and then work on installing the arms and everything on the outside of it. I've got a few little things to do to them while they're out, and I'll show you that real quick. But this is basically ready to go back together now. There's a couple of things on these hubs that I've really been neglecting to take care of, and I'm going to do since I've got it out. This right here has been rubbing on one of the CV boots. It actually does it on both sides. Because I'm using GK Tech uprights, these have spherical bearings in them. And this allows, let's see if I can show you. This arm sits in here like this, and this can rotate. Because this arm, the weight is off center, it naturally wants to turn down like that, and then it will kind of just ride slightly on that CV boot, and you can see that's actually indented it over the last few years. And I'm surprised that it hasn't actually taken the boot out, but this one's done the same thing, and it's flat there, but it still hasn't ripped or anything. So what I've decided to do was that I want to make some of these rubber washers. I'm going to put them on either side of this, and that will allow the arm to sit into that and not turn sideways so much. So I've already assembled this one on this side, and it just limits the travel side to side like this. And these don't need to be able to turn that way, they just need to be able to go up and down. So I think that's going to work out rather well. It shouldn't hit that CV axle anymore. So we'll give that a try. And then I just need to work on these cables, but I ran out of 1/8" cable, so I'm going to go pick up some of that real quick. Also, while taking this arm off, right here, bent, I don't know if you can see in the camera, but there is a crack down through there. It happened on this one too, and I actually welded the crack back up and then added a brace on top to stabilize that. I'll fix this piece real quick and get it painted up so the same thing doesn't happen to this side, or the other side, what happened to this side, where this actually folded over and it only had one ear holding it on for a little while and was causing some noise issues. So we'll take care of that now. I haven't filmed a ton, but I got most of the rear suspension back in. The wheels are just kind of sitting on there. So all the arms are in, everything's tight. I got the e-brake cable all taken care of. So there's the e-brake cable. Plenty of clearance from the drive shaft. I still may put another spring on there to hold it down a little bit, but it's the same angle as the last time and it didn't hit. Now next thing I gotta do is the exhaust and the sway bar. And then this thing is all in. One thing I should mention about the sway bar is I was wrong when I did my walkthrough video. And I've always claimed that this was a JDM Z32 sway bar when I was actually given a R32 rear suspension from the JDM importer, and I apparently did not know that. So this is a R32 rear sway bar. That's why it fits this S13 subframe like it was meant for it, because they're basically the same width, I believe. So now we'll get this sway bar thrown on there real quick, throw that exhaust on, and then it's almost time to take this for a test drive. I do need to swap out the starter. I'll probably do that first. It's getting tired every time you try to start it when it's hot. It it doesn't want to crank over and it's drawing a lot of amps off the battery. But that's a pretty easy job, seeing as it's in here in the garage still. It's been a little while since I've touched my 300ZX. I've been working on getting parts off this thing. A local guy bought the whole rear suspension for a Tacoma, doing a bagged Tacoma or something. So I had to get that out of there, and with the amount of rust that's underneath this car, that wasn't fun. You can see half of the car is sitting there in a pile of rust. But we'll get this done real quick and we'll get it outside and see if we can break it again. All right, everything's back together now on the rear end. Now it's just time to get the starter replaced. I'm gonna see if it'll start up. It hasn't been run in a couple weeks, so we'll just fire it up now and see if it'll even fire. Well, it did start. Not a lot of room to film under here, but we almost have the starter out. But what I want to show you is this. So I suspected that I slipped the clutch at the drag strip, and that to me looks like clutch dust that came out from the bell housing. So looks like I'm probably going to be putting a new clutch in this fairly soon. We'll know more once we get the starter out of the hole. I don't see any clutch material up there in the hole, but you see the disc right there. That's the same color as the powder that's on my oil pressure sender, so more than likely it probably slipped. But now we'll get the starter back in. We got another thunderstorms coming, so I won't be able to test drive this right away, but it'll be ready for it when the storms pass. So I guess it's never just that easy as swapping a starter. On my transmission, the stud pulled out and I had to put a bigger stud in for the bottom ear, and apparently I clearanced it for that instead of using a helicoil into the transmission. So I guess I'm gonna have to open that hole up like that one. It's always something. Starter so quiet, it just actually sounds weird. I'm not used to that. The Z32 starter I've had in here for 6 or 7 years, and this one is insanely quiet. Well, I guess that's what you get for buying a new starter. But I'm gonna get everything picked up here in the garage and then get this ready for a test drive. With the storms out here today, it probably won't be till tomorrow everything dries up.